Daehyun's mansion sits on a hill. It's large, white, and very quiet. Every morning, Daehyun wakes up at 6 o'clock sharp. His day is scheduled down to the minute. He runs a business. A complex business. He solves problems, manages people, keeps everything under control. His home is part of this control. Everything here is perfect. The marble floor in the hallway gleams so brightly you can see the reflection. The sofas in the living room are lined up neatly. The books on the shelves are arranged neatly, alphabetically. Not a speck of dust, not a speck of dirt. It smells of cleanliness and solitude. Daehyun comes home late, often after midnight. He turns on the light in the hallway. His footsteps echo on the floor. The sound is lonely and loud. He hangs his coat on his coat rack, places his keys in the silver bowl on the console. Everything is in its place. He goes into the study, then up to the second floor, to the bedroom. Silence greets him everywhere. He's used to it. This silence means everything is fine. Everything obeys his rules. When Daehyun leaves home, a new life appears in the mansion. Ebony arrives. She opens the back door with her key. She works here 3 times a week. She has her own strict notebook with instructions from the manager. Ebony puts on a simple gray robe. She starts with the top floor. She dusts the few surfaces that are practically unused. She carefully makes Daehyun's enormous bed. She cleans the bathroom mirrors until they shine. She moves quickly and silently. She doesn't turn on music. Only the hum of the vacuum cleaner occasionally breaks the silence. She never lingers. She doesn't sit on the couch or watch TV. She's a shadow, tidying up. Before leaving, she always glances into the huge pantry. There are shelves full of groceries there, canned goods, packets of rice, expensive oils, teas in beautiful jars. Ebony looks at them with a long, attentive gaze. Then she picks up her bag and leaves. The house again freezes, awaiting its owner. One morning, Daehyun is eating breakfast in the kitchen. He's eating alone. In front of him are a plate, a cup, and a newspaper. He looks up. A ray of sunlight falls on the dark wood countertop. The beam is bright, and millions of dust particles dance in it. Daehyun frowns. Dust? In his house? He puts the newspaper down, walks over to the countertop, sips tea, runs his finger over the surface. His finger comes out perfectly clean. But he senses something. Not dust. A trace. Someone's invisible trace. The air seems slightly shifting, as if it had just been stirred by someone's movement. A scent. A light, barely perceptible scent that is not his. Not his soap, not his cologne. Something simple. Soapy. Clean. He walks around the first floor. Everything is in place. Everything is spotlessly clean. But the feeling doesn't go away. Someone was here. Someone who knows his schedule down to the second. Someone who exists in the gaps of his life. He doesn't like the thought. He controls everything. But he's never seen this ghost, this shadow. That evening, Daehyun wanted some tea. Not the bagged kind, but a special green one that he gets from a certain province. He goes to the pantry. On the middle shelf, between the jar of honey and the coffee beans, there should be a square black jar with Chinese characters. She's not here. Daehyun freezes. He looks at the shelf, slowly moves his gaze left-right. Maybe he moved it? No. Everything here has its place. That's the rule. His rule. He starts searching, carefully, without fuss. He looks at other shelves. He peers into the cupboards. The jar is gone. It's disappeared. At first, there's a slight irritation. Then a cold thought. His space has been violated. Someone has taken something that belongs to him. Right here, under his nose. He stands in the center of the pantry, in the cool silence, listening to the hum in his ears. His face is expressionless. But inside everything is taut, like a string. He thinks of a shadow, of an invisible presence, of the smell of plain soap. But then he sighs. He looks away. Perhaps he was mistaken. Perhaps the can ran out and he forgot. He's been very tired lately. His memory can be faulty. Yes, that's probably true. He leaves the pantry, closes the door, decides to drink water instead of tea. He turns off the light in the kitchen and goes upstairs. But a seed of suspicion has already fallen into the soil of his ideal world, and it quietly awaits its moment to germinate. Daehyun begins to notice details. He doesn't see the maid, but he sees her work. Every time he returns, he does a quick check. He runs his finger along the narrow shelf behind the sofa. It's clean. He looks at the leaves of the houseplants. They're carefully wiped, dust-free. The mirror in the bathroom sparkles, without a single water stain. He finds small, almost invisible signs. The vase of flowers is angled differently toward the light. The book on the coffee table lies more evenly than he left it. The air smells different after she's gone. Not chemically, but a light mixture of lemon and fresh linen. He calls the manager who hires the staff. He asks about the maid. She's been working there for 3 months, the manager says. Very punctual, quiet, no complaints. Does everything on the list. What's her name? Daehyun asks. Ebony. Ebony Okafor. Daehyun nods and hangs up. Ebony, a name. The shadow has a name now. It doesn't make it any more real. On the contrary, it becomes even more ghostly. Knowing the name of an invisible person is a strange feeling. He thinks about inviting her, meeting her. But what will he say? Thank you for keeping things clean? It sounds ridiculous. He is Kim Daehyun. He doesn't thank servants. He hires them. Their job is to keep his world in order. But this job seems too perfect to him now, too unnoticeable, as if this ghost wants to be forgotten altogether. Sleep won't come. Daehyun lies in his huge bed and stares at the ceiling. Business, negotiations, numbers, competitors' faces. Everything spins in his head like an endless stream. He decides he needs tea, herbal. Maybe it will help. He stands up. He puts on a dark silk robe. He doesn't turn on the light. Moonlight through the large windows illuminates the way. His bare feet step across the cool parquet floor, then the carpet. There's a different silence in the house at night. Not empty, but thick, full of shadows. The familiar outlines of the furniture seem alien. He descends the wide staircase, holding onto the railing. The kitchen is shrouded in semi-darkness. Only the light from the street lamp outside falls on the countertop. Daehyun goes to the cupboard where the teas are kept. He reaches for the jar of chamomile. And then he hears a sound. It's not the creaking of a house. It's not the sound of wind. It's a distinct, discreet sound. A muffled creak, like a door being opened. The sound comes from the far end of the kitchen, from the entrance to the pantry. Daehyun freezes. His hand slowly drops. He turns his head. He looks into the darkness. There, in the back of the kitchen, the square doorway to the pantry is even blacker than the general darkness. A new sound is heard. A rustling, like paper or fabric. Then a quiet, barely audible step. Daehyun's insides instantly tighten. He's not afraid. He immediately shifts into a state of cold, clear assessment. There's someone in his house. Now, at night. He doesn't move. He doesn't breathe. He just listens. Another step, cautious, stealthy. Someone is coming out of the pantry. The moonlight from the kitchen window doesn't reach that wall. Daehyun sees only a dim, low silhouette. Short, hunched under the weight of something. A silhouette moves toward the back door, toward the exit from the kitchen, into the utility room. This person is holding a large, clearly heavy bag. A paper bag. It rustles with every movement. Daehyun steps forward. He emerges from the shadows of the cabinets into the moonlit strip of light that lies across the kitchen floor. He doesn't say a word. He simply stands and watches. The silhouette freezes. The man with the bag seems to only now become aware of the gaze on him. He turns slowly, very slowly. Now the moonlight falls on him, or rather, on her. It's a girl, a young woman. She's wearing dark pants and a simple dark sweater. She's wearing a dark headscarf. In her hands is a large, tightly packed paper bag. The neck of a glass jar and the corner of a box are visible from the top of the bag. She looks at Daehyun. He looks at her. Ebony's face appears carved from dark marble in the moonlight. Her eyes are wide open, the whites of them bright in the darkness. There's no panic in them, not even fear in the traditional sense. There's a quiet, all-consuming dread. The dread of someone who knows the game is up. She's caught. She's been caught. Her fingers grip the edges of the bag so tightly that the paper crumples with a loud crunch. The sound seems impossibly loud in the silence. She doesn't try to run. She doesn't try to say anything. She just stands there, paralyzed by that gaze. Daehyun sees everything. He sees her plain, tired face. He sees the cheap clothes. He sees the huge bag of groceries from his pantry. He sees the bottomless terror in her eyes. And this terror has nothing to do with his reputation. It doesn't come from knowing who he is. It comes from the simple fact she's been caught stealing. Her job is about to be taken away. Her world, already hanging by a thread, is about to collapse. Seconds pass. They feel like hours. The only sound in the kitchen is Ebony's quiet, ragged breathing. Daehyun breathes silently. He studies her, not as a thief, but as a person. The ghost has become flesh, and this flesh looks exhausted and frightened. He thinks about the missing teapot, about the immaculate cleanliness, about how she worked, knowing she was stealing from him. Every day, he waits for her to speak, to justify herself, to cry, to beg, but she remains silent. She only watches, Her horror gradually gives way to a strange calm. Acceptance. She awaits the verdict. Finally, Daehyun breaks the silence. His voice is quiet, even, and emotionless. He doesn't raise his voice. He simply asks a question. "What do you have in your bag, Ebony?" He calls her by name. He sees her flinch at the sound. She didn't expect him to know her name. She opens her mouth. She tries to swallow. Her lips tremble. She forces out a word, a barely audible whisper. Food. One word. Honest and simple. No excuses. "Yes, it's food, your food. I'm stealing it." Daehyun looks at the bag, then back at her face. He nods. Once. Briefly. His decision is already made, cold and clear. But he's in no hurry to announce it. He allows this silence, this look, this meeting in the moonlit darkness of the kitchen to last a few more seconds. He allows her to feel the full weight of this moment, and he feels it himself. This isn't just the capture of a thief. This is the meeting of two worlds that existed in parallel, never intersecting. Now they collide, and the silence between them hums like a taut string. His voice isn't loud. He doesn't growl or shout. It sounds calm and clear, as if he's asking about the weather. But in this silence, every word resonates. "What do you have in your hands?" Ebony looks at the package, which she almost drops. Her fingers dig into the paper. She wasn't expecting the question. She expected an immediate explosion, a scream, a call to the police, but not this quiet, icy curiosity. She looks up at him again. The moonlight now falls on his face. She sees hard, motionless features. No anger, no surprise. Emptiness. This emptiness frightens her most of all. She takes a deep, shaky breath. It's hard to speak. Her throat is tight. "Food," she repeats, even more quietly. Her voice breaks. She coughs, trying to compose herself. It's food, from the pantry." She doesn't add, "sorry." She doesn't say, "I won't do it again." She simply states the fact. Her body speaks for her. It's tensed, bracing for impact. She looks past him, into the darkness of the hallway. There's a tired resignation in her gaze. She doesn't even try to make up a story. It's an awkward box of rice, a can of preserves, a bag of pasta. Lies won't stick to such simple, heavy things. Daehyun follows her gaze. He sees this strange honesty. The thieves he knows always lie. Immediately, masterfully, with ready-made excuses. This girl doesn't lie. She simply stands there, lute in hand, awaiting punishment. There's something so simple about it that it throws him off his usual rut. His anger, cold and ready for action, encounters this wall of silent recognition and freezes. Daehyun looks away from her. He glances at the huge kitchen island, at the chairs around it, then back at her. "Put the bag on the table," he says. His tone doesn't change. It sounds like an order, but without malice. Just an instruction. Ebony blinks. She doesn't understand. She automatically takes 2 steps forward and places the heavy bag on the counter. The paper rustles loudly. She jerks her hands away, as if from something hot, and freezes again, awaiting the next command or an explosion. Daehyun walks past her to the kettle. He turns on the light over the stove. A soft yellow glow fills part of the kitchen, cutting them off from the total darkness. Ebony squints involuntarily. "Sit down," he says, without looking at her, filling the kettle with water from the filter. Ebony doesn't move. Her mind refuses to process the words. "Sit? This is a trap. This is some kind of game." She looks at the chair, then at his back. He's facing the stove, his posture non-threatening. He's simply waiting for the water to boil. "I said sit down," he repeats, and for the first time a slight note of impatience appears in his voice. Normal, human. Ebony approaches the chair slowly, like a creaking door. She lowers herself onto its very edge. She sits perfectly upright, her hands clasped in her lap. She's ready to jump up at any moment. The teapot begins to hum softly. Daehyun opens the cabinet. He takes out 2 simple ceramic cups, not the most expensive ones. He places them on the table. Then he takes out a small wooden box with tea bags, chamomile, mint, plain black. "Which one?" he asks, turning the box towards her. Ebony looks at the box, then at him. Her mind is desperately trying to find the catch. Why is he offering her tea? Why is she sitting at his table? Chamomile, please," she finally squeezes out. He nods. He puts a chamomile tea bag in 1 cup and mint in another. The kettle boils and then turns off. He pours boiling water into both cups. Steam rises into the air, and the simple, homey scent seems out of place here. He places a cup of chamomile in front of her. Then he places a sugar bowl and a small jug of milk on the table. "Milk? Sugar?" His questions remain simple and matter-of-fact. "Just sugar, one," she says, almost in a whisper. He puts a sugar cube in her cup, takes a small spoon, and sets it next to her. Then he takes his cup of mint and sits down on the chair opposite her, across the wide table. He takes a sip. He looks at her over the rim of his cup. She doesn't touch hers. She simply stares at the rising steam, at the yellowish liquid. Her hands still lie dead weight in her lap. Silence descends on the kitchen again, but it's different now. It doesn't hang like a frozen block. It's filled with simple, everyday sounds. His quiet sip, the hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of a paper bag on the counter. This ordinariness disorientates Ebony even more. She carefully, with one finger, moves the saucer and cup toward her. The warmth of the porcelain penetrates her cold fingers. This is a real sensation. This is not a dream. She's sitting in the kitchen of her boss, whom she robbed, and he poured her tea. She's still waiting for the storm to come. The silence stretches. Ebony finally picks up a spoon and quietly stirs the sugar in her cup. The clink of porcelain on porcelain seems deafening. She doesn't look up. "For Grandma," she says suddenly, her voice still quiet. But now there's no tremor in it, only weariness. "Groceries. I'm taking them for my grandma." Daehyun doesn't answer. He just looks at her, waiting for her to continue. His face is the same impenetrable mask. Ebony takes a small sip of hot tea, warms himself up, then continues, staring somewhere at the wall behind him. "She's sick. She barely gets up. I work here, in another house, and in the laundry. But there's not enough money for medicine, for good food. There's a lot of everything here. You wouldn't even notice." She nods cautiously toward the bag. A pack of rice, a can of stew, tea, butter, something that can be stored for a long time. "I never took money. I never touched expensive things. Only food. Only the bare necessities." She falls silent. The explanation is complete. No details, no pleas for pity. Just the facts. She stole to feed the sick old woman. That's all. Daehyun listens. His first thought is that it's a weak excuse. Everyone says that. Everyone has a sick grandmother. But he looks at her hands. They lie on the table, on either side of the cup. The hands are not those of a young woman. The skin is rough, the fingers are slightly crooked from constant exposure to chemicals, and there are small scratches and burrs on the knuckles. These are hands that work tirelessly. He thinks about what a typical day looks like for her. She comes here and cleans his huge house. Then she goes to another house. Then to the laundry room. Then she returns to some small apartment, to a sick old woman. She cooks, cleans, cares for her. He never thought about it. The world of his servants, his workers, is a flat picture. They exist. They perform a function, and then they leave. They have no faces, much less stories. Other people's problems are noise that prevents him from focusing on what matters most, on business, on control. But now this story sits across from him, drinking his tea. Its story reeks of cheap soap, medicine, and hopelessness. This is the real world that exists beyond the walls of his immaculate mansion. A world where a packet of rice isn't just an object on a shelf, but salvation. Where stealing isn't a challenge, not greed, but a desperate need. He looks at his home with new eyes. That kitchen with appliances that cost as much as a small car. The food in the pantry that he often throws out because it spoils. All this wealth, all this order, and right in the middle of it sits a man for whom its excess has become a breath of fresh air. In Daehyun's chest, it's not pity. He despises pity. It's something else, something long forgotten. A reminder. He remembers another time, a long time ago, a small apartment, the smell of the simple food his mother cooked. She, too, worked several jobs. Her hands, too, were rough. And he, too, when he was little, would sometimes bring home something edible, found at the market. Not from hunger, no, but from the knowledge that every penny counted. He pushes that thought away. It was a long time ago. He broke free from that world. He built a wall. He became a different person. His principles are simple. The weak lose. The strong take what they want. Sentimentality is a luxury he cannot afford. It leads to mistakes. But now, looking at this broken but unbowed girl, his principles begin to crumble. It's not a feeling that awakens within him, but rather an awareness. An awareness of an injustice that doesn't affect him personally, but which he sees right before him. And this awareness irritates him. It brings discomfort into his well-established world. He pushes his cup away. The sound distracts Ebony, and she finally looks up at him. She sees that his face has changed. The icy mask has melted slightly. His eyes no longer hold emptiness, but a heavy, focused thought. He looks not at her as a problem, but through her, into some distant part of himself. "What's her name?" he asks suddenly. His voice is still even, but it lacks the former steel. Ebony blinks, startled. Whose? Your grandmother." She freezes for a second. "Grace," she breathes. "Her name is Grace." Daehyun nods. He looks away again. He looks at the grocery bag, then at his hands, lying on the table. Clean, well-groomed, without a single scratch. A quiet struggle is taking place within him, between his usual cold calculation and this strange, uncomfortable reminder that he was once a person, not just a boss, between the desire to punish those who break the rules and the understanding that the rules of his world don't apply outside of it. He doesn't yet know what he'll do, but he already understands that he won't throw her out into the street or call the police. This simple question about her name is the first step across the chasm he's created. Daehyun looks at Ebony. His internal struggle subsides, giving way to a practical solution. Anger is useless. Pity is weakness. But there is another way, control through agreement. He places his palms on the table. "Listen carefully," he says. His voice returns to its businesslike, dispassionate tone. "I won't fire you. I won't call the police." Ebony stops breathing. She's afraid to believe it. She waits for the word, but. "But you won't sneak around at night anymore," he continues. "It's stupid and risky. If you need food, you take it. Openly. During the day when you work here." Ebony blinks slowly, her mind desperately trying to figure out the catch. "For free? Just like that?" I can't just take," she says quietly. "You can," he counters. "Because it wouldn't be just taking. It would be part of your job. Payback for your past. Dishonesty. On one condition." She freezes, waiting. "Here it is." Daehyun points his chin at the bag. "You take what you and your grandmother need, but once a week, maybe twice. You cook. Here. In this kitchen." Ebony looks at him confused. "Cooking? For you?" she asks. "Yes. Not a dinner for 10. Something simple. One dish. You take ingredients from the pantry, cook it, and leave it for me. And you can have a portion for yourself. That'll be payment. Work, not stealing. Understood?" He's offering her not alms, but an exchange. Preserving her dignity, but on his terms. It's in his spirit. Control. Order. But a new kind of order. Ebony nods silently, her mind racing. This is unexpected. Strange. But it's a chance. Better than she could have ever dreamed of. She nods again, more confidently. "I see. I agree. Thank you." "Don't thank me," he says dryly. "It's an agreement. Break it, and it's all over. You can go now. Take your bag. Is tomorrow your usual cleaning day?" "Yes." "Good. We'll start tomorrow. Cook something. Whatever you can do." He stands up, picks up his empty cup, and carries it to the sink. This is a sign that the conversation is over. The next day, Ebony comes in as usual. She's cleaning, but her thoughts are preoccupied with the evening. She's nervous. She looks into the pantry. She chooses ingredients slowly and carefully. Rice, eggs, carrots, onions, spinach, some ground beef, which is in the freezer. Simple, affordable things. She starts cooking late in the afternoon. Knowing Daehyun usually returns late, she finds a large frying pan. Her entire attention is focused on the process. She chops vegetables into even strips, fries ground meat. Separately, she prepares an egg pancake, cutting it into thin strips. She boils rice. She doesn't try to make anything fancy. She cooks what she knows how to make well, what she eats often herself. Rice with vegetables and meat, topped with bright stripes of egg pancake. Everything is thoroughly mixed in a large bowl, with a little sesame oil and soy sauce. Simple, filling, without any frills. She divides the food into 2 containers. One, the larger one, she leaves on the table. She places a clean chopstick next to it. The second, smaller container, she carefully places in her backpack. She's already finished when she hears the sound of a key in the door. Daehyun enters. Precise, but not perfect, julienne of carrots. Onions, caramelized just enough to be slightly sweet. A light aroma of sesame oil. This is not the food of a chef. This is the food of a person who has cooked many times. He eats slowly. The taste transports him back 30 years. To the cramped kitchen. His mother, tired after her shift, was stirring something in a similar bowl. There was no expensive meat, but there was the same smell of stewed vegetables, the same warm rice, the same simple concern, expressed not in words, but in action. "I fed you. Everything is fine." He finishes every last grain. He sits for a few minutes, staring at the empty container. The house is quiet, but the silence doesn't seem so empty now. It's filled with the echo of a simple taste and an unspoken memory. He washes the container and sets it out to dry. He doesn't decide anything. He simply feels. And this feeling is not weakness. It's as if he's taken a step back to see the whole picture, and the picture turns out to be more complex than he thought. A week later, on her next workday, Ebony is cooking again. This time, she doesn't leave. Daehyun's instructions, conveyed via a short note on the refrigerator, read, "Stay for dinner, 8 p.m. At precisely 8 o'clock, she sets 2 dishes on the table, stewed tofu with vegetables and a bowl of clear seaweed soup. Simple, quick, healthy. She's perched on the edge of her chair when Daehyun enters the kitchen. He's taken off his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves. He nods at the food and sits down across from her. For the first 5 minutes, they eat in complete silence. The only sounds are the soft click of chopsticks on porcelain and the soft slurp of soup. Ebony eats, staring at her plate. Daehyun eats, occasionally glancing at her quickly, inspecting her. Awkwardness hangs in the air, almost palpable. They don't know each other. They're not friends. They're the boss and the maid who stole from him and now sits at his table on an inexplicable whim. Daehyun is the first to break the silence, not with words, but with action. He takes out his phone, places it next to him on the table, but doesn't look at it. It's a small gesture that eases the tension a little. It seems to say, "I'm here, but you don't have to entertain me with conversation." Ebony understands this. Her shoulders relax slightly. She takes another sip of soup. It's good. She knows she's good at cooking simple food. Daehyun, he finishes eating first. He pushes his plate away and takes a glass of water. He looks at her. "Is Grandma feeling better?" he asks. His voice doesn't convey any particular concern, but rather a continuation of their agreement. Since she's taking the food, it's logical for him to ask about its recipient. Ebony flinches at the unexpected question. "A little," she says, looking at her hands. "The new medications are helping a little." She's sitting up more than lying down. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he replies automatically. Then he adds, "Who else lives with you? Besides Grandma?" This is no longer a question of agreement. It's curiosity. Slow, cautious. Ebony freezes for a moment. She doesn't want to talk. Her family is her fortress, her pain, and her responsibility. Sharing this with him, it's strange, but he gave her a chance. The least she can do is answer. "My sisters, 2. The youngest. How old are they?" His questions come calmly, without pressure, as if he were filling out a questionnaire. "Quino is 15. Chidi is 6. 6? Daehyun's voice, for the first time slightly surprised, sounds. "And you?" 23. He nods slowly. 23. The calculations run wild in his head. She works 3 jobs, cares for a bedridden grandmother, a teenager, and a first grader. At 23. At his 23, he was already solving problems and earning his first serious money. His world was one of ambition and strength. Hers was a world of endless care and survival. There was a pause. Ebony waited for the next question, but it didn't come. The silence became awkward again, but this time it was different. He was thinking. She felt his gaze on her, heavy and analytical. "Who's with them while you're here?" he finally asks. "With Grandma now. Aquino is watching Chidi after school. I cook food in the morning. They heat it up. I get home late. Are you studying?" She shakes her head. "No. After school, I went straight to work. At first, I helped my mother, then it was just me and my grandmother." She doesn't say what happened to her parents. He doesn't ask. Some chasms are best left uncrossed. Daehyun leans back in his chair. His face is inscrutable, but his eyes are narrowed. He imagines her day, getting up before dawn, getting his sisters ready for school, working here, cleaning, cooking for him, then other work, then laundry, then coming home, checking home work, helping his grandmother, preparing food for tomorrow. "They're my family." Those simple words, "they are my family," hang in the air. For Daehyun, family is an abstract concept, more often than not a problem or an obligation. It's not something worth exhausting yourself over. It's something to protect, control, and sometimes even keep at a distance. For her, it's the only reason to keep going. He looks at her tired but calm face, at the hands that held the chopsticks so confidently. There were no complaints in her simple answers. There were no requests. There was only the truth. And this truth makes his own world, a world of mansions, expensive cars, and subtle political games, suddenly seems somehow empty, brilliant, but empty. He stands up abruptly, taking his plate back. Tomorrow you can take those chocolate bars from the blue box in the pantry for your sisters. They've been there for a long time. I don't eat them. This isn't a question. It's an order. But a special kind of order. It's permission to take something not simple, not rice, but something extra, something for pleasure. Ebony looks at him wide-eyed. Thank you, she whispers. He's already turned to the sink, but nods in response. He washes his plate, and she finishes hers. The awkwardness has almost disappeared. It's been replaced by another feeling, a slight puzzlement on her part, and a heavy, concentrated thought on his. He started asking questions, and received answers that seemed to make him think about something. Something shifted, very slightly, but enough that their next dinner might not be so deafeningly quiet. Dahyun leaves the mansion at exactly 8 in the morning. His day is scheduled. Meetings, negotiations, reviewing documents. He always works until late. That's the rule. But a few days after their second dinner, something goes wrong. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he ends the meeting early. He has time until the next one. He sits in his office downtown and looks out the window. He could be studying new reports, checking his email. Instead, he dials his assistant. Cancel the meeting with the architects, he says evenly. Reschedule it for tomorrow. Is there a problem, boss? Asks the assistant. No, just reschedule. He hangs up. He takes his keys and leaves the office. His driver looks at him in surprise when he tells him the address of the house. They drive in silence. Dahyun returns to the mansion at 4 o'clock. The house isn't empty. Sounds come from the kitchen. The rustling of a rag, the light clatter of dishes, then a voice. A quiet, melodic hum. Ebony is cleaning, and she sings. Just a few notes, no words. He stands in the hallway, listening. He's never heard anyone sing in this house. The sound cuts off, as if she sensed his presence. A moment later, she emerges from the kitchen with a bucket and rag in her hands. Seeing him, she suddenly freezes. Confusion and slight panic are on her face. I finished in the living room, she says quickly. I'll finish in the kitchen and then go. He looks at her, nods. Take your time, he says. Continue. He walks past her into the office and closes the door. He's not working. He's sitting at his desk, looking at stacks of papers. He's listening. It's quiet outside again. She's no longer singing. Half an hour later, he hears the back door close gently. She's gone. He walks into the kitchen. Everything is sparkling clean. There's a note on the table. There's some kimchi and rice left in the fridge for dinner. Feel free to reheat. He stands there for a few minutes, staring at the fridge. He's broken the routine, and the world hasn't collapsed. On the contrary, a new strange order has appeared in the house. Now he comes back early once or twice a week. No warning. He just shows up. At first, Ebony flinches every time, as if caught in the act. Then she gets used to it. She simply nods, says hello, and gets back to work. Dinners also become regular. Not every day, but often. He simply says, today at 8, and she stays. They eat together, sometimes silently. Sometimes he asks short, specific questions. Is everything okay at school? About his sisters? Are the medications helping? About his grandmother? Do you need any other utensils? About cooking. Her answers are always short and polite. Yes. No, thank you. Everything is fine. But one evening, as they're eating simple noodle soup, she asks the question first, very cautiously. Do you always work this much? Dahyun looks up at her. He wasn't expecting the question. Yes, he says after a pause. It has to be this way. Do you like it? He looks at her, trying to figure out where the catch is. But there's just quiet curiosity in her eyes. It's not about liking it, he finally answers. It's about necessity, to have everything under control. She nods as if she understands. Maybe she does. Control over her life is something she doesn't have. They finish their soup, and the conversation doesn't return to this topic. But something has changed. Questions can now go both ways, albeit rarely, albeit cautiously. One Saturday morning, Dahyun comes into the kitchen for coffee. Ebony is already there. She's standing at the table, stirring something quickly in a large bowl. Flour, eggs, milk. A frying pan sits nearby. Pancakes? He asks, pouring himself some coffee. Yes, she says, not looking up from her bowl. American ones. Sometimes I make them for my sisters on the weekends. He watches as she pours batter onto the hot pan. The batter sizzles and spreads into a smooth circle. A minute later, she deftly flips the pancake in the pan, and it flips in midair. Do you know how to do this? She asks, not looking at him. No, he says honestly. He hasn't cooked for himself in probably 20 years. She nods. Then, unexpectedly, she says, "Want to try? It's not difficult." Daehyun looks at the frying pan, then at her. This is going beyond their agreement. The agreement is, she cooks. He eats. But she's offering to teach. This is something new. He puts down his cup of coffee. "Okay," he says. She steps back, giving him space at the stove. She explains simply, without unnecessary words. Pour a little oil. Wait until the pan is hot. Pour the batter with a ladle like this into the center, and quickly tilt the pan to spread it out. He does everything she says. His first pancake turns out thick, uneven, and tears in the middle when he tries to flip it. "It's okay," Ebony says, a slight smile in her voice. "The first one is always a flop. The second one will work out." He tries again. The second pancake is better. The third is almost a perfect circle. He even tries to toss it like she does. It falls into the pan, folded in half. They both stare at this shapeless mass, and then something strange happens. Daehyun makes a short, quiet sound, almost a laugh. Ebony freezes at first, and then smiles too. Widely, truly. "Well, that was an adventurous pancake," she says, and he hears again in her voice that melody he heard when she sang. He turns off the stove. He places his failed creation on a plate next to her perfect pancakes. "Thank you for the lesson," he says seriously. "You're welcome," she replies. They eat these pancakes together for breakfast. He eats his crooked ones, she hers, straight ones. Nothing special happens. But at this moment, there is no boss and no maid in the kitchen. There are simply two people, one of whom has taught the other how to make pancakes. And this simple lesson turns out to be more important than many deals. It doesn't make money, it doesn't strengthen control, but it fills the house with something warm and real that will remain there even after the dishes are washed and put away. That evening, after one of their dinners, this time it was pasta with tomato sauce, Daehyun doesn't immediately go into the office. He sits at the table, slowly swirling a glass of water. Ebony clears the dishes. The silence isn't awkward, but calm. "You mentioned that you went straight to work after school," he says suddenly. "What did you like about school? Your favorite subject?" Ebony puts her plate in the sink and turns around. The question catches her off guard again. He's asking about such simple human things. "Literature," she says after a pause. "Poetry especially. I loved how words can create entire worlds. And art history. I loved looking at reproductions of paintings in textbooks." Daehyun nods, taking a sip of water. "And you?" she dares to ask. "What did you like?" He pauses to think. His school years seem like a different life. "Math," he says finally. "Precision. Logic. There's always a right answer. And strategy games. Chess, where you have to think several moves ahead. Do you still play?" she asks, wiping down the table. "No, I don't have time, and I don't have anyone to play with." There's a pause. Then, without looking at her, he continues. "When I was a kid, about 10 years old, I really wanted a new model of bike. All the kids in the yard were already riding them. I saved up my pocket money for a whole year, giving up everything. And when I had saved up, I realized that model was already outdated. A new one came along, even cooler. So what did you do?" "I bought that old one. And every time I rode it, I got angry that it wasn't the best." "Stupid, right?" Ebony smiles. "No, it's like my little sister. She was saving up for a doll. Then she bought it, and a week later, she broke its arm. She cried for 2 days. They look at each other, and in that moment, they're not boss and maid. They're simply two adults sharing memories of childhood disappointments. It doesn't change their situation, but it adds new layers to their portraits of each other. He sees in her not only the hardships, but also the girl who loved poetry. She sees in him not only the cold master, but also the boy who resented his outdated bicycle. The following week, Daehyun leaves an envelope, not a note, on the kitchen table. Inside is a substantial sum of cash and a short note. To restock the pantry, buy what you need for the house and yourself. Ebony finds the envelope in the morning. She stares at the money for a long moment, then at the note. Before, she'd taken what was available. Now she's being offered a choice. This isn't just permission to take food, it's trust. Trust in her common sense, in her taste. She goes to a good supermarket, not a cheap discounter. She carefully prepares her list. She buys high-quality rice, olive oil, fresh vegetables and fruits, and good cheese that might surprise him. She buys spices that weren't in the pantry, and a separate pack of that same green tea that went bad first. She puts the receipt in an envelope with her change. When Daehyun looks into the pantry in the evening, he sees changes. The food isn't just arranged neatly, it's arranged thoughtfully. Nuts in glass jars, fresh herbs in pots on the windowsill, and in its usual place, a black, square jar of tea. He picks it up and turns it over. He says nothing. Over dinner, she'd baked fish with those same fresh herbs. He says, "The tea's back in place." "Yes," she replies calmly. "It seemed right." He nods. That's enough. He trusted her with the choice. And she made the right choice, buying, among other things, what she had once taken secretly, as if repaying a debt. But it wasn't a debt anymore. It was a confirmation of their new, strange agreement, built on direct action, not theft. One day at dinner, Ebony looks more tired than usual. She's silent, eating slowly, her mind clearly elsewhere. Daehyun notices. He doesn't ask. He simply observes. A few days later, his assistant, a man in an impeccable suit, brings him paperwork for a new property to sign. A small apartment complex Daehyun purchased as an investment. Leafing through the documents, Daehyun sees a list of current tenants. His gaze skims the lines, and then suddenly stops. He sees the address, and the name. Okafor, in the same neighborhood she'd mentioned in passing. He remembers the address from her job application. A coincidence? Possibly. But in business, he doesn't believe in coincidences. He puts the papers aside. An hour later, he calls the manager of the complex. "The Okafor family lives at this address," he says evenly. "Are they having problems with rent?" The manager nervously flips through the file. "Yes, boss. They're a little behind. We've already sent out a warning. The procedures are supposed to start next week." "Stop it!" Daehyun interrupts. "Write off their backlog and lock in their rent at the current level for 3 years. No increases." "But boss, the market price. Did you hear my instructions?" Daehyun's voice becomes quiet and dangerous. "Yes, boss. It will be done." Daehyun nods and lets him go. He's not doing this out of kindness. He's doing it because it's effective. Ebony has become valuable. She cooks. She's honest. She keeps his house tidy, making it feel a little less empty. Her housing problems are an unnecessary variable that could affect her work. He's simply removing the variable. That's how he always handled business problems. He doesn't tell her about it. Not a word. But a week later, he sees her face brighten. The heavy, constant worry in her eyes subsides a little. She no longer looks so exhausted. At dinner, she even tells her that Chidi's sister received a certificate of honor at school, and Grandma Grace was able to walk to the corner store. A few days later, Ebony prepares a special dinner. Not a simple dish, but a complete feast. She bakes small meat and vegetable pies, and prepares a complex aromatic soup that she simmers all day. She sets the table with the best dishes from the cupboard, even though he didn't ask for it. They eat. The food is incredibly delicious. And at the end, when she brings the tea, she stops, looks at him, and says very quietly, but very clearly, "Thank you for everything." He understands what she means. She's guessed. She doesn't know how, but she has. He simply looks at her and tilts his head slightly. A silent acceptance of gratitude. No explanations, no words. He helped because he thought it was necessary. She thanked him because she thought it was necessary. And in this silent exchange, something lasting is born between them. Something that can no longer be simply called an agreement. It's something like reciprocity. Cautious, unspoken, but real. Ebony's suspicions arose the next day after a strange call from the management company. The voice on the phone sounded unnaturally polite and announced that the outstanding debt had been resolved by management and that the rent would remain unchanged for the long term. Ebony asked questions, but was met with generalities about company policy and tenant loyalty. She hangs up and sits for a long time on the edge of the sofa in her small living room. Grandma Grace is asleep in the next room. Facts are spinning in Ebony's head. The rent issue was serious. She'd been saving money, but it wasn't enough. And suddenly, everything was resolved on its own, without her intervention. That doesn't happen. She recalls dinner a few days ago, her fatigue, his attentive, searching gaze. He asked questions about the neighborhood, about the daily difficulties. He didn't comment on her answers, just listened. Then she remembers his situation, his affairs. Could he really own that very complex? It's possible. Or just one call from him could solve everything. It's definitely possible. She thinks about his character. He's not a man of empty gestures. When he does something, it's for a specific reason. Out of cold calculation, not pity. Maybe he just wants to ensure her stability so she can work harder? Maybe he sees her problem as a threat to his own comfort. This idea seems logical, but there's a hole in it. If he simply wanted to secure the position, he could have given her a raise, directly and openly. Instead, he acts covertly, without taking credit or embarrassing her. He solves the problem without her even being involved, as if he understands that openly helping her might embarrass or humiliate her, as if he considers her feelings. The thought silences her. She looks at her hands. Kim Dae-hyun, a man whose name inspires fear in certain circles, has shown her tact, an unfamiliar, strange tact. She no longer doubts. She is sure it was him. Ebony doesn't say a word. She doesn't write a note. She can't say thank you directly. That would mean admitting she understood his hidden actions and would violate the strange, unspoken rules of their interaction. He didn't speak, and she won't. But she must respond. Her culture and her heart demand it. The answer must be as direct, silent, and meaningful as his action. She spends almost her entire week's salary from her other job at the market. She seeks out special ingredients. The freshest calamari, a special spicy paste, extra crisp soybean sprouts. She buys expensive cold-pressed sesame oil. She doesn't take anything from his pantry for this dinner. Everything must be bought with her own money. This is important. On her next workday, she starts cooking in the morning. She makes hamulton, a spicy and rich seafood soup. This dish isn't for everyday consumption. It's reserved for special occasions, holidays, and special guests. It requires time and attention. She meticulously cleans the squid, simmers the concentrated broth, and tends the fire. The scent that permeates the house is complex, rich, with smoky and spicy notes. This is not the smell of a simple home-cooked meal. It is the scent of hard work and respect. When Dae-hyun comes into the kitchen in the evening, he sees more than just a bowl of soup. He sees the setting, a lacquered trivet, a patterned porcelain tureen. Nearby are small rice bowls and plates with side dishes, kimchi, pickled radishes. He sits down. He tastes it. The flavor is intense, deep, balanced between the heat of the spicy pasta and the sweetness of fresh seafood. This is the best thing she's ever made. This isn't just food. It's a work of art. And he realizes that all the ingredients, all these spices, are new. They weren't in the pantry. He eats silently, slowly. He understands the language of this dinner. It is gratitude, nonverbal but crystal clear. She spent her time, her energy, and her money to tell him what she cannot say in words. She saw his gesture and responded with her own, remaining within the confines of their silent dialogue. He finishes the last spoonful of soup, drinks the last drop of broth. He looks at her. She stands at the counter, waiting for his assessment of the food. Exceptional, he says quietly. And in that single word, there's more than just an appreciation of culinary skill. There's a confession. I got your message. She responds with a slight nod. No words, just understanding. After that evening, something in the mansion begins to change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Ebony no longer leaves immediately after cleaning. Sometimes she lingers to water the flowers she used to just dust. She brings a small cutting from her houseplant, with thick green leaves, from home, and places it in a clay pot by the kitchen windowsill. Dae-hyun sees it, but says nothing. The plant thrives. One day she leaves a neatly folded stack of new art magazines on the living room coffee table. Not tidy, but rather folded. The same ones she'd been flipping through in school. Dae-hyun, passing by, stops and flips through one. Then he puts it back. The next day, he finds the magazine on the table in his office. He, in turn, stops treating the kitchen as neutral territory. Now he sometimes makes coffee in the morning, not just for himself, but also leaves a full cup on the table if he knows she'll be home soon. He buys a new, more convenient kettle, and he keeps several packets of good cocoa in the pantry, which he once heard her younger sister loves. Sounds creep into the house, not just their voices at dinner. Sometimes he works in the study with the door slightly open, and she can hear the soft tapping of a keyboard or the rustling of papers. While cleaning, she might turn on the radio in the kitchen at a low volume. Not singing, but background. The background presence of another person. One evening, Dae-hyun returns from an informal meeting. He's tired. Instead of heading straight to his office, he takes off his jacket and goes to the kitchen. He doesn't call her. He simply sits down at the table. Ebony, who had just finished mopping the floor, sees him. She silently sets the bucket aside and turns on the kettle. She makes him some tea, that same green one, and places it in front of him. Then she sits down on her chair opposite with a cup of regular tea. They don't eat. They just sit, silent. But this silence is no longer emptiness, but a quiet, shared space. The mansion no longer seems so huge and cold. It's starting to feel like a home, a place where you can just sit and drink tea after a long day, feeling the presence of another person next to you who understands you. Not completely, not entirely, but enough. Changes are beginning to happen in Dahyun's business. They're small but fundamental. He holds a meeting with his closest associates. He speaks clearly and coldly. "We're ceasing all operations with high-interest loans," he announces. "We're reviewing existing contracts and reducing the rates to legal ones. Anyone who doesn't agree can go to the bank." Silence falls over the room. This was one of the most profitable, but also the toughest areas. "Boss, this is unexpected," one of the assistants says cautiously. "This is a decision," Dahyun snaps. "Second, we resolve disputes with competitors and partners through negotiations or in court. No forceful persuasion. I'm tired of cleaning up the consequences of stupid things." He doesn't explain his true reasons. He simply gives orders. There's no sudden insight inside him. There's a cold calculation. He watches Ebony, her tenacity, her family. He sees how fragile the ordinary world is, and how easily it can be broken. His methods suddenly seem not just cruel, but ineffective in the long run. They create too much chaos, too much instability. They attract unnecessary attention. He doesn't become a philanthropist. He becomes more pragmatic, precise. He purges his business of anything that might threaten the new, fragile order in his life, an order that includes quiet dinners and a potted plant on the kitchen windowsill. His men are surprised, but they obey. Daehyun's strength no longer lies in intimidation, but in absolute, unwavering determination. And this determination frightens them more than his previous methods. One day at breakfast, Daehyun places an envelope and a business card on the table in front of Ebony. "He's a doctor," he says, cutting off a piece of omelet. "A specialist in diseases like your grandmother's. He runs a private clinic. He's waiting for your call." Ebony glances from the envelope to him. It doesn't contain money, but a letter of guarantee from a medical company that she later realizes he owns. All expenses are covered. "I can't," she begins. "You can," he interrupts. "It's not a gift. It's logical. If Grandma gets better, you'll be able to focus more on your work. And your sisters," he pauses. "Chidi's school is weak. There's an art school near Okafor's house. I talked to her. There are places for both sisters. And transportation." He says it as if he were discussing plumbing repairs, without emotion, practical. He's once again presenting her with a solution, not a handout. He's giving her family tools, health and education, the opportunity to get ahead through hard work, but without the insurmountable barriers of before. Ebony is silent. There's too much going on. The medication is one thing, but school, it's a dream. She knows how Aquino secretly draws in old notebooks, how Chidi makes figures out of Play-Doh. Her eyes fill with moisture. She turns away, quickly wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Thank you," she says dully. And this time the word is so heavy, it seems the table beneath it sags. "The payment will be deducted from your salary," he remarks dryly, finishing his omelet. "In minimal installments, over the course of 20 years. They both know it's a formality, that her salary won't even come close to covering these expenses. But those are his rules again. Maintaining the appearance of an exchange. Maintaining her dignity. She nods, unable to speak any longer, and clutches the envelope and business card tightly in her hand. She feels the enormous mountain that has weighed on her for years suddenly begin to crumble, letting in light. Several months pass. One late evening, Dahyun stays late at a business dinner. Everything went well, the contract is signed. He should feel satisfied, but instead, he feels irritated. He's not interested in listening to empty conversations. He wants to leave. He returns to the mansion close to midnight. The lights are on in the hallway. Not the bright main lights, but the soft lighting along the staircase that was recently installed. He can hear the quiet sounds of the television coming from the living room. He peers in. Ebony is sitting in the corner of the sofa, her legs tucked under her. A documentary about Renaissance artists is playing on the screen. She watches, covered with a light blanket that usually lay folded in the closet. Her teacup sits on the table nearby. She doesn't notice him right away. He stands in the doorway and looks at the plant on the windowsill, at her slippers, neatly arranged by the sofa, at the magazines on the shelf. The air smells of more than just cleanliness. It smells of cocoa and the apple she's apparently been eating. He doesn't say a word. He turns and goes into the kitchen. A few minutes later, He returns with 2 cups of cocoa. He places one on the table next to her. Ebony shudders, looking up from the screen. I'll finish and leave, she says, moving to stand. No need, he says quietly. He sits down in the chair opposite her. He picks up his cup. Finish watching. She slowly sinks back down. They sit in silence, drinking cocoa and watching a movie. He doesn't follow the plot. He watches the light from the screen play across her pensive face. He feels a strange, deep calm. It's at that moment that he understands. He understands what happened. He built a fortress of marble and silence to control the world, and the world seeped in through a small crack, through the frightened eyes of a maid caught with a bag of food. And now people live in the fortress. A plant grows, soup is made, and he no longer needs to control it, because it's no longer a fortress. This is a house. He takes a last sip of cocoa. He puts the cup down. The film ends with the credits. Ebony turns off the TV. The room is silent again, but it is warm and full. Tomorrow, he says, getting up. If you have time, you can make those pancakes. American ones. I'll try flipping them again. She looks at him and smiles. Not widely, but genuinely. Okay, she says. I'll teach you how to toss them properly. He nods and goes upstairs. In his bedroom, he looks at the perfect order, the impeccably made bed. Everything is the same, but everything is different. He goes to bed and, for the first time in years, falls asleep quickly, without the usual long toss and turn in the empty darkness. He no longer dreams of control. He dreams of a simple pancake flying through the kitchen air and laughter that doesn't echo loudly in the void, but softly dissolves in the warmth of the house. A new routine begins. It's not planned, not discussed. It just happens. Ebony comes in the morning. Sometimes Daehyun is still home. He sits in the kitchen with his laptop and coffee. He might say a quick, good morning, and get back to work. She responds in kind and starts cleaning. Now she doesn't freeze when she hears his footsteps. His presence is no longer an intrusion, but part of the background. Sometimes he leaves her notes. Not instructions, but notes. Please buy more of that yogurt with honey. Or, the light fixture in the office is broken, tell the manager. One note reads, good luck to the sisters on the test. He remembered them complaining about a tough week at school. She leaves notes too. Soup in the fridge. Reheat for 3 minutes. Or, the plant on the windowsill needs repotting. I'll do it on Friday. Their dinner conversations become longer. They don't always talk about anything important. Sometimes he'll recount some absurd situation during a negotiation. She'll laugh, a quiet, restrained laugh. Sometimes she'll mention that Chidi brought home a funny drawing from school, or that Grandma Grace made breakfast herself for the first time in a while. He listens. He nods. He asks clarifying questions. He's interested, not because it's good for business, but because these stories are pieces of another life, real and warm, and they fill the silence of his home with meaning. One Saturday morning, Daehyun says over breakfast, I need to meet my partner, here, in the office. About an hour. You can do it, as usual. He means she can do her own thing. But this time, her chores are a major cleanup after the week, and she planned to be in the living room and hallway. At precisely the appointed time, the doorbell rings. Daehyun opens it. A man his own age stands on the threshold, wearing an expensive but flashy suit. It's Park, his longtime, but not his closest partner. A man of the old school. Puck steps over the threshold and freezes. His gaze sweeps across the hall. But he sees more than just luxury. He sees a pair of children's crayons on the console. Chidi forgot them when she came over with Ebony one day after school. He sees that same blanket, carelessly folded on the stair railing. He sees the open door to the living room, from which comes soft music and the sound of a vacuum cleaner. Park's face expresses utter astonishment. He knows Daehyun's house. He knew it as a sterile, lifeless fortress. What do you have here? Park couldn't help but ask. Life, Daehyun answers dryly and leads him into the office, closing the door. The meeting goes well, but as Puck leaves, he glances around the hall once more. His gaze falls on Ebony, who has emerged from the living room with an empty bucket. She nods politely and goes into the kitchen. Park turns to Daehyun, standing in the doorway of the office. His expression is a mixture of confusion and mockery. Seriously, Daehyun? The maid and all this? He gestures broadly. Domesticity? Daehyun's face doesn't change, but a cold, dangerous spark appears in his eyes. One Park knows all too well. She's not a maid. She's Ebony, and what you call domesticity is my home. There will be no further comments on this matter. Understood? His voice is quiet, but there's steel in it. But he said what he said, and he realized that for him, It was now true. She wasn't just an employee. She was part of the order in his house, and he would defend that order as fiercely as he once defended his territory. The day comes when Grandma Grace feels so well that she decides to thank the person who, as she understood from her granddaughter's halting explanations, is helping them. She asks Ebony to extend an invitation to a family dinner. At home. At theirs. Ebony is horrified. She tries to talk her grandmother out of it. Their tiny apartment, the basic food, the noisy sisters. It's not for someone like Dahyun, but Grandma Grace is adamant. If he helped, he needs to be thanked properly. At the table, she says. Ebony. She's been nervous all week. On Friday, at dinner, she stutters out an invitation. She braces herself for a polite but firm refusal. Dahyun listens. He puts his chopsticks down. When? He asks. On Sunday. At 6. But I understand if you… Okay, he interrupts. I'll be there. Give me the address. On Sunday, he arrives promptly at 6. Not in his usual chauffeured black sedan, but by taxi. He's dressed not in a suit, but in simple dark pants and a sweater. No security, no pomp. Dinner takes place in the cramped but cozy living room. The food is simple, but heartily prepared. Grandma Grace, wise and calm, speaks to him not as a formidable boss, but as a guest. She thanks him directly and with dignity. Aquino, at first timid, then talks about her dream of becoming an illustrator. Chidi, the bravest, tries to teach him her finger-picking. Dahyun is reserved but polite. He answers questions. He samples all the dishes. He listens. He feels out of place, but not because of the squalor of the surroundings. Rather, it's because of the unfamiliar, almost explosive concentration of simple family life around him. The noise, the laughter, the interruptions, the shared memories, all of this is a new universe for him. When he leaves, Ebony walks him to the taxi. I'm sorry about all of this, she says, embarrassed. Don't apologize, he says, looking at the lighted window of her third-floor apartment. You have a nice family. Thanks for dinner. He gets in the car. On the way home, he looks out the window at the flickering lights of the city. He's not thinking about deals. He's thinking about Chidi sneaking double the sugar into his tea when she thought he wasn't looking. About Grandma Grace's firm, warm handshake. About Aquino's genuine enthusiasm when she showed him her drawings. His mansion is quiet and empty. He turns on the light in the hall. It's immaculate, rich, quiet. And for the first time in years, this silence feels not comfortable, but loud, too loud. He realizes he's spent a few hours in a world where he's valued not for his power, not for his money, but simply for being there. And this world has proven surprisingly solid and real. It's almost time for the Korean New Year. Previously, Dahyun spent it either alone, working, or attending formal receptions. This year, things are different. A week before the festival, Ebony asks if he'll mind if she cooks traditional dishes. Tteokguk, rice cake soup, and mandi. It takes a long time and requires a lot of space. Cook, he says. Do you need any help? She looks at him in surprise. I can set the table, he offers, and there's a rare hesitation in his voice. He can't cook complicated dishes, but he can do this. She smiles. Okay, I'll show you how to arrange everything correctly. She cooks all day. He comes into the kitchen several times watching. He helps carry the heavy pots. Then, as agreed, he helps set the table in the dining room, which is almost never used. He listens to her explanations. This dish is for longevity. This one is for prosperity. This one is for good luck. In the evening, they sit at a huge table. The dishes are placed between them. He feels a little awkward, but the ritual is important. Sekebok mani badeuseo. Ebony quietly pronounces the traditional New Year's greeting. Sekebok mani badeuseo. He repeats a little more confidently. They eat. The taste of tteokguk, which he hasn't had since childhood, brings back a wave of warm, almost forgotten memories. He doesn't say anything about it, but she sees his face soften. Thank you, he says after dinner, as they wash the dishes together, for reminding us of the traditions. Thank you, she replies, for giving us the opportunity to observe them. That evening didn't change anything fundamentally, but it became another brick in the foundation of their strange, silent union. It was filled with meaning that went far beyond food. It was an act of preserving something important, a shared memory created together. Almost a year has passed since the night he caught her with the bag. Dahyun looks in the mirror in his bathroom. His face has hardly changed. The same hard lines, the same piercing gaze, but something has changed inside. He can feel it. Before, His strength lay in his complete lack of attachments. They made him vulnerable. Now he has something, not attachment in the usual sense. Responsibility, involvement. He is responsible not only for his business, but also for the well-being of this woman and her family. And strangely, this doesn't make him weaker. It gives him a different point of support, a more stable one. He comes out of the bedroom, goes downstairs. Ebony is already in the kitchen, making breakfast, the smell of coffee and toast. "Good morning," she says without turning around. "Good morning," he replies. He sits down at his chair and picks up a newspaper. Everything is as usual. But this, as always, is no longer a lonely routine, but a ritual of community. He looks at her calm, confident movements. He thinks that his mansion is no longer empty, that there is life in it, that he can return here not to hide from the world, but to be part of this small, fragile, but real world they inadvertently built. He doesn't tell her this. He simply unfolds the newspaper. But when she places a cup of fresh coffee, he looks up at her and nods. A single nod that contains everything: recognition, gratitude, and a quiet, firm understanding that this is right, just as it is. No big words, no promises, just mourning in a house that has finally become a home.